It was a bright Monday morning, the kind that carried a sense of busy beginnings. The city was already awake, cars honking in the distance, shopkeepers lifting shutters, and people rushing off to their work. Inside a small apartment on the quieter side of town, Sarah sat at the edge of her bed, tying the laces of her worn shoes. She had just finished her own night shift at a local bakery, and her eyes felt heavy. But before she could even rest, she heard a soft knock on her bedroom door. It was her sister Lena. She looked pale, her hair messy, her voice weak. "Sarah," she whispered, "I don't think I can go today. I have a bad fever. My head is spinning." Sarah stood up instantly, worry spreading across her face. "You can't go to work like this, Lena. You should stay in bed." Lena shook her head stubbornly. "But if I miss my shift, they'll be angry. The manager already warned me last month when I had to take a day off. This building doesn't like unreliable staff." Sarah thought for a moment. She knew how important Lena's housekeeping job was. It wasn't just about cleaning rich people's apartments, it was steady work that helped pay their rent. If Lena missed too many shifts, they might replace her, and losing that income would be hard on the family. "Don't worry," Sarah said finally, her voice calm and firm. "I'll go for you today. Just rest. I'll sign in with your name. Nobody will know." Lena looked surprised. "But Sarah, you don't even know the apartments. What if you mess up?" Sarah gave a small smile. "Cleaning is cleaning. I'll manage. You just get better." And so, without another thought, Sarah washed her face, tied her hair into a neat bun, and changed into Lena's simple maid uniform. She slipped Lena's ID card into her pocket and stepped outside. The morning air was fresh, carrying the smell of freshly baked bread from the shop at the corner. Sarah took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "I can do this." The apartment building where Lena worked was nothing like the modest neighborhood Sarah lived in. It was tall, with glass walls shining in the sunlight. Expensive cars lined the driveway, and a doorman in a navy blue uniform stood straight at the entrance. Sarah felt a little nervous as she walked in, holding Lena's ID tightly. "Morning, Miss Lena," the doorman greeted with a polite nod. Sarah forced a smile and nodded back, thankful that the ID worked. She signed her sister's name in the logbook at the security desk, her handwriting slightly shaky. The guard didn't look too closely, he simply pointed her toward the elevator. As the elevator climbed to the top floors, Sarah's heart beat faster. She had covered for Lena before at smaller apartments, but this was different. The numbers on the elevator screen climbed higher and higher until it stopped at the penthouse level. The doors opened into a wide hallway with soft carpet and tall wooden doors. She double-checked the unit number Lena had told her, 25B. Sarah knocked gently. For a moment there was silence, then hurried footsteps. The door opened, and a man in a crisp suit stood before her, phone pressed to his ear. His expression was sharp, his tone clipped as he spoke into the device. "Come in, just clean quickly," he said, waving her inside before turning back to his call. Sarah stepped into the apartment, her eyes widening. The place was modern and luxurious, large glass windows, polished floors, expensive furniture. But it wasn't as spotless as she expected. Children's toys lay scattered on the carpet. Books and papers were piled on the coffee table. A half-eaten breakfast sat abandoned on the dining counter. She heard a small voice behind her. "Who are you?" Sarah turned to see a little girl, about 7 years old, standing in the hallway with a backpack hanging loosely from her shoulders. She had big brown eyes and clutched a stuffed bunny in her arms. "I'm here to help clean," Sarah said gently. "And you must be Mia, right?" The girl nodded, still studying her with curiosity. "The nanny left. Daddy says we'll find someone new soon. Are you the new nanny?" Sarah smiled softly. "No, just here to clean today." She noticed Mia's shoelaces were untied, and her lunchbox was still on the counter. "Do you need to get ready for school?" Mia sighed and looked down. "Daddy's busy. He always forgets the permission slip for the trip. Teacher says I can't go if it's not signed." Sarah crouched down to Mia's level. "Let me help you look for it. Where did you last keep it?" Together, they searched through her backpack. Sure enough, the folded paper was tucked in a side pocket. Sarah placed it on the table near the man's keys and wrote a quick note on a sticky pad she found: "Mia's trip slip is due today, folder pocket." Just then, the man walked back in, ending his phone call. His brow was still furrowed from business talk, but he stopped when he noticed the neatly arranged counter, the keys, the slip, the note. For a brief moment, his expression softened. "Thank you," he said quietly, glancing at Sarah with something between relief and surprise. Then, without another word, he guided Mia toward the door, reminding her to hurry. Once they left, Sarah began cleaning with steady hands. She wiped down the counters, picked up toys, folded blankets, and placed books neatly on the shelf. She noticed family photos on the wall. One showed the man, his late wife, and little Mia, smiling under a bright sun. Sarah paused for a moment, feeling the weight of the picture. The wife's absence explained the quiet sadness that lingered in the apartment. As she continued, she thought about the man's hurried movements, the little girl's anxious eyes, the abandoned breakfast. It was clear this wasn't just a wealthy family with a messy home. There was something deeper, something tender that needed more than cleaning. When she finished, Sarah placed everything neatly, leaving the apartment in order. She didn't expect thanks, but she felt good knowing she had helped in some small way. Before leaving, she glanced one more time at the note she had written for the father. The small act felt important, though she couldn't explain why. When the door closed behind her, Sarah thought to herself, "I was only supposed to cover my sister's shift. But maybe this job will turn into something more than I imagined." The next morning, Sarah thought her role as a stand-in maid was finished. She had covered her sister's shift, done her best, and expected to return to her usual routine at the bakery. But when she returned home that evening, tired from kneading dough and serving customers, Lena was still sick in bed. Her fever hadn't broken, and she looked weaker than before. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," Lena whispered. "Could you cover just one more day for me?" Sarah hesitated. She had barely gotten through the first day without anyone noticing. She wasn't trained as a housekeeper in such a grand building, and the thought of being discovered scared her. But when she saw Lena's flushed face and tired eyes, her decision was made. "Don't worry. Rest again tomorrow. I'll take care of it," Sarah said gently. And so, the next morning, Sarah put on the same uniform, tied her hair neatly, and slipped Lena's ID card into her pocket once again. As she walked toward the towering glass building, she felt her heart race. Something inside told her this second day might be different. When she stepped into the penthouse, she noticed the difference immediately. The man, the CEO she now knew was named Adrian Hale, looked even more rushed than the day before. He had his laptop open on the dining table, papers spread around him, and his phone pressed to his ear. "Quarterly report needs revision by noon," he said in a clipped tone, pacing the room. He barely noticed Sarah as she entered, but his daughter Mia did. "Hi again," Mia said softly, peeking from behind the sofa with her stuffed bunny. Sarah smiled warmly. "Good morning, Mia. Did you have breakfast yet?" Mia shrugged. "I don't like toast. Daddy forgot the strawberry jam." Sarah looked toward the kitchen and saw a half-buttered slice lying on a plate. Adrian was too busy juggling calls and emails to notice. Without saying much, Sarah quietly went to the fridge, found a jar of jam, and spread it neatly on the toast. She placed it in front of Mia with a small napkin folded beside it. "There you go. Now it's complete," Sarah said kindly. Mia's eyes lit up as she took a bite. Thank you. For a few moments, the room felt calmer. But not long after, trouble arrived. The building manager, Mr. Collins, came to check on things. He was a strict man with a sharp tone, always watching over the staff. He frowned when he saw Sarah kneeling beside Mia, helping her with her shoelaces. You, he said sternly, you are not here to babysit. Your job is to clean. Nothing else. Sarah stood quickly, embarrassed. I was only helping her tie her shoes, she explained softly. Collins shook his head. This is exactly what I warn staff about. Do your duty and don't overstep. Mia's face fell, and Sarah felt a sting of shame. She wanted to reply but stayed silent, remembering Lena's warning about not upsetting the management. Just then, Mia gasped. My locket, she cried suddenly, clutching at her neck. The small silver chain was gone. Her eyes filled with tears. It was Mommy's. I can't lose it. Sarah immediately dropped to her knees and began searching. Don't worry, Mia. Let's think. When did you last have it? On the sofa, Mia sniffled, pointing toward the cushions. Sarah gently lifted the pillows and felt underneath. Sure enough, the little locket had slipped deep into the corner of the couch. She pulled it out carefully and handed it back. Safe and sound, she said softly. Mia hugged it close and smiled through her tears. Thank you. I thought it was gone forever. Adrian, who had been distracted by his phone, turned at that moment. He had seen enough to understand. His gaze shifted from his relieved daughter to Sarah's calm presence. For the first time, he seemed to truly notice her. Later that day, another small crisis happened. Mia spilled her juice on the floor, and a photo frame slipped from the table, cracking the glass. Sarah hurried to clean up the mess. Instead of scolding, she gave Mia a playful task. Let's do a challenge, she said. 10 minutes to put all your toys into this basket. If you win, I'll clap for you like the biggest fan in the world. Mia giggled and ran around collecting her dolls and blocks, while Sarah swept the glass and wiped the juice. By the end of the 10 minutes, the floor was clean, the toys were neatly stacked, and Mia was laughing. Sarah clapped loudly. You won. Adrian returned from his call at that very moment. For a second, he just stood there, watching the scene, his daughter smiling, the living room tidy, the air no longer heavy with stress. Collins, the building manager, also reappeared, ready to scold again. But before he could speak, Adrian interrupted. His voice was calm but firm. She's here at my request, he said, looking directly at Collins. Let her work. The manager froze, nodded stiffly, and left without another word. Sarah felt a rush of relief. Adrian had defended her. She gave him a grateful glance, but he had already turned back to his laptop, though his expression was softer than before. By the time her shift ended, Sarah wanted to leave everything in order. She didn't just clean, she quietly organized little things that would make the next morning easier. She packed Mia's lunch boxes, labeled them, placed her reading log on the table, and left a small checklist on a notepad. Lunch packed laundry started Mia's reading log ready. She placed the note where Adrian always left his keys, hoping he'd see it. That evening, after she returned home to check on Lena, Sarah logged into the shared building portal to confirm her sister's attendance. There, she noticed a message. It was from Adrian Hale. If possible, could you cover one more day? Same time tomorrow. Sarah stared at the screen for a long moment. She hadn't expected the CEO to notice her, let alone ask for her directly. Something inside her stirred a mixture of nervousness and quiet pride. She hadn't planned to return, but maybe her sister's absence and Adrian's request meant fate had other plans. With steady fingers, she typed back, yes. I'll be there. That night, lying in bed, Sarah replayed the day in her mind. She had only meant to cover for her sister, but somehow, she had stepped into a world of marble floors and hurried meetings, of a little girl who needed gentleness, and a father who carried more weight than he could show. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she felt something unusual, a sense that her presence had mattered. And though she didn't yet understand it, this was only the beginning of a bond that would change all three of their lives. The third day came sooner than Sarah expected. She thought Adrian might only need her once or twice, but his message the night before had been clear. He wanted her to return. She woke up early, tied her hair neatly, and dressed once again in Lena's uniform. As she looked in the mirror, she reminded herself, "I'm just helping my sister. That's all. Nothing more." Still, deep inside, she knew this was no longer just about helping Lena. Something about Mia's trust and Adrian's quiet, unspoken relief the previous day had made her feel her presence truly mattered. When Sarah arrived at the apartment that morning, the atmosphere was calmer. Adrian wasn't pacing around with his phone. Instead, he sat at the dining table, typing on his laptop. He looked up briefly when she entered and gave a polite nod. "Good morning," he said simply. His voice carried less tension than before. Mia, however, came running straight into the room, her backpack bouncing behind her. "Sarah," she exclaimed, her little face glowing. "I told Daddy you'd come back." "I knew it." Sarah smiled, kneeling to greet her. "Of course. I said I would." The little girl hugged her stuffed bunny tightly. "Can you help me with the shoes backpack note thing again? It makes mornings easier." Sarah tilted her head. "Shoes backpack note?" "Yes," Mia said proudly. "Yesterday you showed me. Shoes ready, backpack ready, note for Daddy. It worked. I wasn't late." Sarah realized the child had remembered their simple routine from the day before. She chuckled softly. "Then let's make it our morning game." Adrian watched quietly from the table, his hands pausing on the keyboard. For a man always pressed for time, seeing his daughter handle mornings with more ease was no small gift. As Sarah tidied the rooms, she noticed more about the family's life. There were framed photos of Adrian and his late wife on the shelves, smiling at the beach, laughing in a garden, holding baby Mia in their arms. The woman's presence lingered in the apartment, though her absence was felt even more strongly. She also noticed Adrian's routine: endless calls, constant typing, checking his watch every few minutes. It was clear he carried the heavy weight of both fatherhood and business leadership. During a short break, Adrian finally spoke. "How do you keep her calm?" he asked, his voice lower now, almost thoughtful. Sarah was surprised. "Calm?" He nodded toward Mia, who was drawing quietly on the floor with her crayons. "She used to be anxious in the mornings. Since her mother passed, routines are difficult. But you make it look easy." Sarah hesitated before answering. "Children like clear steps. My nephew is the same. If they know what comes first, they feel in control. It makes things less scary." Adrian nodded slowly, as if filing away her words. For a moment, silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but thoughtful. Then, as quickly as it came, the moment ended with the ring of his phone. He excused himself, back to the world of deadlines and decisions. Over the next few days, Sarah's presence became part of the household rhythm. She didn't only clean. She noticed details, set things in order, and gently guided Mia without overstepping. One morning, she helped Mia pack her reading log into her bag. Another day, she left a simple note reminding Adrian about a school project. These were small gestures, but they built a sense of calm in the home. Mia started opening up more. She told Sarah about her favorite storybook, about the way her mother used to sing at night, about the worry she felt when her father worked late. Sarah listened with patience, never pushing, just allowing the child to speak. But not everyone approved. Rumors started among the other staff in the building. Some whispered that the CEO was giving this maid special treatment. Others said it wasn't fair. The HR department even approached Adrian with caution. "Sir, perhaps be careful. Personal involvement with household staff can cause misunderstandings." Adrian's reply was calm but firm. "Then let's fix the system for all. Better schedules. Fairer breaks. Proper respect. If anything, this situation has shown me the flaws in how we treat staff." Word spread quickly. Other workers noticed small improvements in their schedules and better communication with management. No one knew exactly why things were changing, but Sarah suspected Adrian's conversations with HR had something to do with it. One Thursday morning, Mia surprised everyone. At breakfast, she asked her father shyly, "Daddy, can you come to family reading morning at school tomorrow? We're supposed to bring a parent." Adrian froze. His calendar was already packed with meetings, and the request caught him off guard. He looked torn, almost guilty. "I'll try," he said softly, "but I can't promise." Mia's face fell. She lowered her eyes to her cereal bowl. Sarah, standing nearby, spoke gently. "If you can't make it, Mr. Hale, I can go with her. She just needs a familiar face." Adrian looked at her, surprised. There was a pause, then a nod. "Thank you. I'll do everything I can to be there. But, thank you." Mia's eyes brightened a little. "So, either way, someone will be there." "Yes," Sarah said with a warm smile. "You won't be alone." That evening, Sarah returned home and sat with Lena, who was finally recovering from her illness. She told her about Mia's school event and Adrian's request. "You're getting too involved," Lena warned softly. "Be careful. This isn't your world. You're just filling in for me." Sarah sighed. "I know. But that little girl, she reminds me of us when Mom had to work double shifts. Remember how we wished someone had just shown up for us? I don't want her to feel forgotten." Lena looked at her sister for a long time, then gave a tired smile. "You always had the bigger heart." The next morning, Sarah rose early, determined to keep her promise. As she prepared her clothes, she thought about how unusual this week had been. She had stepped into a life completely different from her own: marble floors, towering windows, a powerful man weighed down by responsibility, and a little girl who clung to small routines for comfort. She didn't know what the future held. Maybe once Lena returned to work, her part in this story would end. But for now, she was exactly where she was needed. And as she picked up her bag, she whispered quietly to herself, "Tomorrow, no matter what, Mia will not sit alone." The day of the big investor pitch arrived, and with it came the most unexpected turn. Adrian had been preparing for weeks. His calendar was packed, his phone rang non-stop, and every detail of the presentation had to be perfect. This deal could secure the future of his company. But fate seemed to have other plans. That morning, Mia woke up with a burning forehead. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes glassy, and her small voice weak. "Daddy, I don't feel good," she whispered. Adrian froze. He touched her forehead and felt the fever. Panic rose inside him. The nanny he had hired to temporarily fill the gap had already called to cancel the night before, saying she'd found another job. Now Mia was sick, and he had one of the most important mornings of his career ahead. He ran a hand through his hair, staring at the clock. He had to leave in 20 minutes if he wanted to make it downtown. Just then, the doorbell rang. Sarah stepped inside, holding her cleaning kit. She noticed immediately the stress on Adrian's face and Mia lying weakly on the couch. "What happened?" she asked gently. "She's burning with fever," Adrian replied, his voice tight. And I have a pitch I can't miss. The driver is already waiting. I don't know what to do. Sarah looked at Mia and then at Adrian. Calmly, she said, first, let's take care of her fever. Do you have a thermometer? Adrian nodded and rushed to get it. Sarah knelt beside Mia, stroking her hair. It's okay, sweetheart. We'll make you feel better. The thermometer beeped. 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Too high for comfort. Adrian looked torn, almost helpless. I can't leave her like this, but I can't miss this meeting either. Sarah thought quickly. You don't have to choose. You can stay here and do the pitch online. Set up your laptop. I'll take care of Mia. Adrian blinked, surprised. Online? From here? That's impossible. No, Sarah interrupted gently, it's not. The world has changed. People do video calls all the time. What matters is that you're there, speaking clearly. Let your team handle the numbers. You focus on the vision. Adrian stared at her. She wasn't a businesswoman, but her words cut through his panic with unexpected clarity. Without another word, he opened his laptop and began setting up. As Adrian prepared for the call, Sarah kept Mia comfortable. She fetched cool compresses from the bathroom, laid them on her forehead, and made sure she sipped water slowly. She kept her calm, which in turn kept Adrian from breaking down under pressure. At exactly 10 o'clock, the pitch began. Adrian's face filled the laptop screen, and investors from around the world appeared in their little boxes. Good morning, everyone, Adrian began, his voice steady though his heart was racing. Sarah sat in the corner, holding Mia's hand, making sure the child was comfortable while keeping the room quiet. As Adrian spoke, he occasionally glanced at his daughter, lying just a few steps away. Each time he did, his voice grew steadier. It wasn't just about profits or charts anymore, it was about building something lasting, something that would give his daughter a secure future. Halfway through, one of the investors asked a tough question about company values. Adrian paused, then glanced again at Mia. At that moment, Sarah was placing another cool compress on the child's forehead, her movements gentle and sure. Adrian answered, our company is not just about numbers. It's about people. Today, I'm presenting from my home, while my daughter is sick. And yet, my team is handling the technical details without me. That's our value: resilience, trust, and humanity. The room on the screen fell quiet, and then heads began nodding. The crew took over the financial slides while Adrian spoke about long-term vision. The investors were impressed not just with the numbers but with his honesty and the balance he showed between work and family. Meanwhile, Sarah slipped out quietly during a break. The elevator was stuck because of a short power glitch, but instead of waiting, she took the stairs down, hurried to the nearby pharmacy, and returned with medicine and doctor-approved supplies. By the time she came back, the power had returned, and the elevator was working again. Adrian barely noticed her absence until she reappeared with a small bag. Paracetamol syrup, fever patches, and rehydration salts, she explained simply. I kept the receipts. For the first time that day, Adrian smiled. It was brief but filled with genuine gratitude. Thank you, Sarah. Truly. The pitch ended successfully. Adrian closed the laptop, exhaled deeply, and finally let himself relax. He walked over to Mia, who was dozing peacefully, her fever slowly lowering. Then he turned to Sarah. I don't know how to thank you, he admitted. His voice was no longer the sharp tone of a busy CEO. It was softer, almost vulnerable. If you hadn't been here, I would have lost everything, either the pitch or my daughter's comfort. You gave me both. Sarah shook her head. You chose right. You stayed with her, and that mattered more than anything. Adrian looked at her, almost as if seeing her for the first time not as a maid covering her sister's shift, but as a person who had quietly held his family together in a moment of crisis. Later that evening, after Mia had fallen asleep and the apartment was quiet, Adrian sent a message to his company. Family first is not a slogan. Today I learned it at home. Our strength lies in supporting each other, both at work and in life. Starting immediately, staff schedules and policies will reflect that. He made sure to include recognition for the housekeeping and support staff, crediting them as the unseen backbone of the company. When Sarah checked the portal later that night, she read his message and felt a warmth spread through her chest. She hadn't expected her small actions to ripple out into something larger. Yet somehow, they had. That night, Sarah walked home under the quiet glow of the city lights. She replayed the day in her mind: the fever, the broken elevator, the pitch, Adrian's words, Mia's small smile when her fever dropped. She thought about Lena, who would be returning to work soon, and wondered if her part in this strange chapter was ending. But deep inside, she sensed that this story was not finished. For now, though, she was content knowing one simple truth: she had been exactly where she was needed, at exactly the right time. The days following the big investor pitch felt different. The apartment, once heavy with tension, carried a lighter atmosphere. It wasn't only because the pitch had gone well, or that Mia's fever had broken. Something else had shifted. A sense of calm had slowly filled the home, like sunlight streaming through once closed curtains. For Sarah, the experience had been life-changing. She had never planned to step into this world. She was only covering her sister's shift, yet somehow she had become part of the rhythm of a family she had never imagined meeting. A week later, Lena was finally better. She put on her uniform again, grateful to return to work. "You've done more than enough for me, Sarah," she said one morning as she buttoned her shirt. "I don't know how to thank you." Sarah smiled. "You don't need to thank me. I only filled in while you rested." But as Lena returned to her job at the building, she noticed something remarkable. The schedules were fairer, the staff were treated with more respect, and small gestures of kindness had been introduced into their daily routines. There were new breaks allowed, better equipment provided, and even a notice about a scholarship program for staff who wanted to study further. It seemed the quiet influence of Adrian Hale had spread beyond his home and into the lives of many others. At the Hale residence, changes were also visible. Mia's mornings were no longer filled with chaos. With her little whiteboard routine, shoes, backpack, note, she felt ready for school each day. She even began leaving small notes for her father, like "Don't forget water bottle" or "Meeting at 9, remember breakfast." Adrian often smiled when he saw them. These little reminders, so much like the ones Sarah had left, reminded him that his daughter was slowly regaining her confidence. One morning, Mia proudly announced, "I got a gold star for reading, Daddy." "That's wonderful," Adrian said, hugging her tightly. "And who helped you practice?" Mia tapped her chin thoughtfully. "Sarah. She listened while I read every page." Adrian glanced at Sarah, who had just entered the room to tidy up, and gave a grateful nod. Then came family reading morning at Mia's school. This was the moment Mia had been waiting for. She stood at the entrance of her classroom, eyes wide, searching the hallway for a familiar face. And there, to her joy, she saw not one but two. Her father, dressed in a simple shirt instead of his usual business suit, and Sarah, standing beside him with a reassuring smile. "Daddy. You came." Mia squealed, running into his arms. Adrian crouched down and hugged her tightly. "I promised, didn't I?" Inside the classroom, Adrian read aloud from Mia's favorite book. His deep, steady voice carried warmth as the children listened. Sarah sat quietly in the back, watching the scene with a soft smile. For the first time in a long while, Mia looked completely at peace, her hand resting on her father's as he turned each page. After the event, Adrian and Sarah walked Mia back to the car. The little girl skipped happily ahead, humming a tune. Adrian turned to Sarah. "I don't think I've said this properly before, thank you. Not just for that day during the pitch, but for everything. You've given me something I didn't know I needed: time with my daughter." Sarah shook her head modestly. "I only did what anyone would do." "No," Adrian said firmly, his tone gentle but sincere. "Not everyone would have cared the way you did. You've helped us more than you realize." A week later, Adrian called Sarah into his study. Papers were spread out on the desk, and a contract lay neatly on top. "I'd like to offer you a permanent position," he said. "Not just as a cleaner. As a household coordinator. You'd manage the home, make sure Mia's routines are steady, and have proper pay and benefits." Sarah froze. "Me? But I'm not trained for something like that. I only stepped in for Lena." "You've already proven you can handle more than any training could teach," Adrian replied. "You see details others miss. You care for Mia in a way that makes her feel safe. That's worth more than certificates." Sarah hesitated. "But I also want to continue my studies in child development. Evening classes. If I take this job, I don't want to give that up." Adrian smiled. "Then don't. We'll work around your schedule. In fact, that knowledge will only make you even more valuable here." For the first time, Sarah felt seen not just as a replacement maid, but as a person with her own goals and dignity. Slowly, she nodded. "All right. I'll accept. But only if it's clear that I'm not replacing anyone unfairly." Adrian extended his hand. "Agreed." Life gradually found a new balance. Lena continued her job in another wing of the building, grateful for the stability. She also applied for the scholarship program Adrian had started and enrolled in a certification course. Sarah attended her evening classes while working at the Hale household during the day. She found joy in both learning new skills and applying them in a home where her work mattered. And Mia flourished. With steady routines, gentle support, and her father's renewed presence, she blossomed into a more confident child. Her laughter filled the rooms again, echoing off the polished walls. One quiet afternoon, Sarah stood in the kitchen, wiping the counter. She tucked the scholarship acceptance letter into her bag, her heart light. She thought about how strange it all was, how a simple act of covering her sister's shift had led her to this place, to this family, to this new path in her own life. She remembered the first day she walked into the apartment, nervous and unsure. And she remembered Adrian's hurried footsteps, Mia's anxious eyes, the scattered toys. How different it all looked now. The toys were still there, but they were tidied with joy. The footsteps were still hurried sometimes, but they slowed for Mia's stories. The apartment was still large and grand, but it now felt like a home. One evening, as Adrian tucked Mia into bed, she whispered, "Daddy, do you know why I don't feel scared anymore?" "Why, sweetheart?" he asked. "Because now I know someone will always show up for me. You. Or Sarah. Or both. I'm not alone." Adrian kissed her forehead, his eyes misting. "That's right. You'll never be alone." Outside the door, Sarah overheard the words. She stood quietly for a moment, then smiled to herself. In the end, nothing dramatic or flashy happened. There were no grand gestures, no fairy tale endings. Instead, there were small, steady acts of kindness, patience, and presence. And those small acts were enough to transform a home, strengthen a family, and give hope to people who needed it most. For Adrian, it was a reminder that success wasn't measured only in boardrooms but also in the quiet moments with his daughter. For Sarah, it was proof that even the simplest choices, a sister covering a shift, could open unexpected doors. And for Mia, it was the comfort of knowing that love, in its many forms, would always be there to guide her.